morning. I'm just going to go send a link over here to my buddy, Dr. Tracy Gapin, who will be joining us a little bit later. He just needs his link resent to him. All right, we got that going. Zoom has been actually working really well, thankfully. All right. All right. Now, great, we're up on YouTube. So as a reminder to everybody, we are going live to YouTube and here. Everyone who has signed up for this will be also getting the link replay and resources from tonight, as well as last night and Monday night, all sent over to you as soon as we get that taken care of. It'll probably be a few days, maybe the beginning of next week. We're going to edit the videos, have them up for free. And you'll also be getting a lot of the resources from our panelists that we've been talking about through the week, especially from this evening. So we'll just wait another moment or two and let other people have a chance to join here. And as I was saying a moment ago, I just want to, the best place for us to ask questions, and please feel free to do so, ask it in the chat. That way everybody can see it and we can have an ongoing conversation, get to as many of them as we can. Q&A will work, but it's just not as easy for us. So either way will work, but definitely if you can handle it on the Zoom chat for everyone, that'd be great. Great to see everyone here. Thanks for joining us. So we are at the top of the hour. And I have to just, all right, good. Dr. Tracy Gapin is all set now. So he'll be with us around 8:30. So everyone, thanks so much. My name is Dr. Tom Moorcroft. I'm really excited to have you here for this evening. This is day 3 of our Coronavirus Voices of Reason webinar series. We're really having a great week. We had Cynthia Thurlow, Terry Walls, and Katie Kimball on Monday. Amazing conversations about food, getting ourselves creative and our kids creative and safe in the kitchen. Last night was amazing too. We were talking about a lot about mental health and how important that is for our overall immune function and just our health in general, and how to really focus with our kids at home. We had Dr. Roseanne Kapana-Hodge talking about how we can, chat with our children, things that she's seeing in her clinical practice as a holistic psychologist. Then we talked to Nicole Berkins, who really dove deeply into things we can do to help when our kids have executive function issues, attention issues. And we had a really nice discussion about how all the things that come up when we're at home, and really it's quality time over quantity time. And so, in terms of learning and worrying about, if we're on the computer too much, it's making time to do the quality things that have to get done. And really, like a lot of our homeschooling time, all our panelists last night said, 1 or 2 hours of really good deep work is really going to make a huge difference. And we don't necessarily need to be worrying about 6 or 8 hours of hardcore like we would at school, because it's a different learning environment. And then the end of the evening, we talked with Dr. Elisa Song, holistic pediatrician, super great friend of all of ours. Amazing conversations going on about helping our kids, what she and her family went through when her 2 children had COVID-19. There's a little question of whether her and her husband might have been, had it before then. And certainly my wife and I think we have. We're all just waiting to find out, because we didn't even know about it when we were sick. So I'm really super excited for tonight. We're going to be kicking off with my buddy Darren Engels, and I'm going to unmute him and get his video going up here as we introduce him. He's a naturopathic physician. Anybody who follows me regularly knows Dr. Darren and I do a lot of work together. We're both seeing a lot of Lyme and autoimmune conditions. Darren also sees a lot of autism. His approach really has a lot to do with prevention and recovery, using a lot of the self-care activities and food modalities that we talked about earlier this week, but also, a lot of just super in-depth knowledge of herbs and medications. And as an added bonus, he's actually a microbiologist prior to becoming a naturopathic physician. So Dr. Darren Engels, I'm super excited to be hanging out with you, brother. And what's going on? Welcome.
Well, you can see I've got this beautiful ocean behind me.
You get a new green screen?
I got a beautiful new green screen, so I'm like so happy the way my office is an absolute mess. So I'm too embarrassed to turn my virtual background off. So
Oh my goodness.
it's funny. I live here in Southern California, where I think getting outside, getting fresh air and vitamin D is so helpful for the immune system, and yet our government has willfully told us we can't go to the beach. They've closed all the beaches here, so we just have to enjoy it virtually now, or do a drive-by. So today was actually a beautiful day. I did go sit out in the sun for about 20-30 minutes today and just get some natural vitamin D. It's 75 and beautiful, so I recommend definitely, as much as people can take advantage of the weather, depending on where you live, get the forces of nature working for you.
Yeah, no doubt, man. It's amazing. It's like what a little bit of fresh air is doing. I mean, I think I've been saying since the beginning of all this, we need to get good sleep, but in order to get good sleep, we need to get up, get out in some fresh air to kick on our melatonin production, and just, move around a little bit, move the lymphatic fluids, and get out and just enjoy. It's so much more quiet outside,
Exactly. Well, I think, you and I have talked about this before, and, you and I both work with Michael Burnoff. And I think, the language that we're using right now is really important. And the thing that we keep seeing blasted on the media is, that we're in lockdown. We're in lockdown. Very few places in the world are truly on lockdown. We're in shelter in, which is, you're being asked to stay home unless it's really necessary. But that doesn't mean you can't go out in your backyard. That doesn't mean you still can't walk in your neighborhood as long as you're social distancing. So I think, as much as we can use the things that we have available to us to our advantage, again, I think a lot of us have been afforded the time to actually take advantage of that. So that means, be with your kids, be with your family, be with, whoever's in your immediate environment, and, take that opportunity to, work on health, work on wellness. I think, Dr. Walls talked a little bit about this the other night as well, is that, we've got a lot of things that are at our fingertips that don't cost any money, that we can still use to help improve our overall health and wellness. And, we've now been afforded that time where, we all complain about time, right? We just never have enough time to do this, time to go to the gym, time to do that. Well, most of us have been afforded that time. So why not take advantage of it? So I've been recommending, again, get outside, get some fresh air, get some vitamin D. If there's that exercise thing that you've been wanting to start, now you've got time to start it. So why not?
It's really interesting to me because, I'm talking to you, I'm talking to Terry, we're talking to, Cynthia Thurlow and all the other guests. And we have all these experts in nutrition and supplements and medicine, yet they all are telling us to just chill out and go outside and enjoy ourselves and take a break.
Yeah, look, I think, nutritional supplements definitely have their place. Like I said, I'm a naturopathic doctor by training, so I know a lot about herbs and, nutrition. I mean, are there things that we can do to help improve our health? Absolutely. When it comes to COVID-19, because this is such a new thing, we really don't know what the best things are. We know that there are certain things that we do for viruses as a whole. This is a novel virus. It's new. Does it behave the same way as other viruses? We honestly don't know. So I think a lot of us are making our best educated guesses of what we think are going to help help people, get through this, either prevent it from getting infected in the first place, or if you've been infected, hopefully nip it in the bud before it becomes more serious. In reality, we don't really know what these things are outside of these small handful of studies that have been done with something like IV vitamin C. There's a couple of, small drug studies. In terms of nutrition, I've yet to see actually a single study outside of the IV vitamin C that's been done looking at, is there an amino acid? Is there a vitamin? Is there an herb that's really going to be effective against this virus? And the God's honest truth is we really don't know. But I think what you're hearing, from the previous two nights and what you're going to hear again tonight is that, we have an opportunity to take stock of our health. And ultimately, it's about keeping yourself healthy. And I'm really hoping what will come out of all this is that it's a wake-up call to everybody that, don't wait for a pandemic to go, wow, my health isn't as great as it could be. And now I'm maybe at risk, because we know that all these comorbid factors are, in 90% of these cases, a cofactor in why people have gotten very serious illness with COVID-19. So if you're overweight, if you're diabetic, if you're on immune suppressive medication, if you've got certain autoimmune diseases, there's a pretty long laundry list of things that predispose people to, this virus. And I will argue, again, as a microbiologist, we're talking about COVID-19 because it's the thing that's out there now. But if you are at risk, you're at risk all the time. There will be another virus. I can promise you, this is not the last pandemic we're going to see, certainly in my lifetime. We know from history, every 8-10 years, something else comes along. Now, sometimes it's a big deal. Sometimes it's not a big deal. I mean, if you look at when, MERS came out in 2012, there were 2,500 cases. Now we're up to 2 million with COVID-19. So, it's a lot about perspective and context, but there will be something else that comes out. So, I'm hoping, again, this will be a wake-up call for people that, it's about what you put in your mouth, how you maintain your lifestyle, do you move your body? And there's a reason we're all talking about this, because this isn't just about dealing with COVID-19. It's really about getting your body healthy to the point that it will stave off these things naturally.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because like Dr. Walls wrote a book on how to reverse MS. And the primary thing are two things: food and, moving and exercise. And then you wrote a book on healing Lyme and autoimmunity. And if I'm not mistaken, food and moving are really high on your list of things to do, and, we've talked a lot about the ACE2 receptors. We hear all this in the media. Do we want it low? Do we want it high? Now we're talking about ACE2 exhaustion and all this. And it right. Sounds like for normal, optimal immune function, our ACE2 levels, at least in our blood, we want to have relatively high, and then it just so happens that regular aerobic exercise and plant-based whole food diet bump that up as well. So, I mean, what does this diet exercise thing have to do with health?
Well, there's so many, mechanisms about how viruses enter your body that, every virus is a little bit different. And I'll use influenza as a great example. Influenza uses a molecule called ICAM1. It's an attachment molecule to the outside of your cell. So a lot of us naturally express this on our cell surface. It's not abnormal, but that's the entry point for this virus to get into the cell. And all these different viruses out there need an entry point to get into cells. And with, the SARS-CoV-2, this ACE2 receptor seems to be that entry point. So, we will get, scientists out there, research will get into the mechanistics of, are there ways we can manipulate these receptors, manipulate these outer surface proteins to maybe prohibit these viruses from entering. But again, you can look at any virus, Epstein-Barr virus, flu virus, cold virus. Why could you put 100 people in a room, expose them equally? Some people get ill and some people don't. Right. So it's the same thing we're seeing with this current virus. And why do some people get exposed, get very sick? Some people get minor cold symptoms. What's the difference? Now, again, I'm oversimplifying this by a ton, but to a certain degree, I think we could argue that your health status going into that exposure probably plays a pretty significant role. And again, just looking at the stats so far, again, we're seeing the overwhelming majority of people who've certainly been hospitalized, put on ventilators, and died. Most of them have had some sort of underlying health condition. So I think what we're really talking about is how do we keep you from getting to that point?
Yeah, and I think that I've been trying to make the point to every audience I can speak to. We've got really two things we're dealing with. We're dealing with a virus, and we're dealing with and the virus needs a host because it can't replicate on its own. And let the scientists and the researchers talk about this. But what you're saying, we're not going to really know much about this COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2 virus for a really long time. We're going to hypothesize, but we're not going to really know. But what we know is we have a lot of research on what we can do to change the host. And that's so empowering because I have the opportunity to actually make myself the world's worst viral host.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, so if I were to put something into my diet or take something out of my diet, what might that be? I mean, are there any like top 2-3 things I really need to be thinking about? And then I want to ask you the same question about, herbs and stuff, because I know a lot of people have questions about what should I be taking if I want to boost up my immune function.
Yeah. Well, in terms of diet, I think if we look at things that either help your immune system or work against your immune system, I have to laugh. I saw a post on Facebook today. I've been trying to stay off Facebook because it's just at the point where it's so annoying that there's so much conflicting information. Of course, everyone now is a COVID-19 expert, but the dietitians of Canada actually posted this. They're actually advising people to stop believing that you can change your immune system with diet. They said there's no evidence you can boost your immune system with diet. And one of my colleagues who's Canadian posted it, and I can't believe an organization like that can make such a statement when we have so much research about how diet influences your immune system, particularly those parts of your immune system. So we're talking about NK cells, natural killer cells, or T cytotoxic cells. These cells are the cells that when they see something foreign, they go directly after it, eat it, and get rid of it before it becomes a problem. So that's the part of the immune system we really want to engage. We want to make sure it's working at its best. And again, we have a lot of evidence in the literature that this does happen. So in terms of what not to eat, that's the easy stuff. Stop eating crap. I mean, it's that simple. Stop eating junk food. And, I think what's made the situation worse for so many people is we're more or less stuck indoors. We're bored. We've got all the wrong reasons to eat. And I've been just as guilty of it. I'm fine. I'm eating more. In fact, one of my patients came in the other day and he's like, "Oh, Dr. Ingalls, I can see you put on some weight." I'm like, "Gee, thanks."
Thank you so much. Thanks for noticing.
It's like, I'm no different. We're all, we're not as active, many of us, as we were prior to for any number of reasons. Again, I think, we still have the power to control that. But to a certain degree, again, a lot of us are, eating in ways that we don't typically do for any number of different reasons, but we can still make choices. I remember when this whole thing first came out, it was amazing. Went to the store. If you went to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods, wherever you shop, it's like all the junk food aisles were cleaned out. Yet all the fresh produce, fresh fruits, their aisles were perfectly filled and fine. So clearly what people were stocking up on was not the healthy stuff.
Right. Like when this all started, Darren, everybody's like, "I can't find the food I need." And people are sending me photos of cleared off shelves, like you just said. But for me, we went to the store, we found everything we always need.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything that I eat was there. I didn't have a problem at all, with the exception of maybe one or two. Like I couldn't find salt. Just plain old salt. Salt was cleared out. So why we needed to binge on salt, I have no idea. But that was one of the few things that was sold out. But otherwise, all the other fresh food was there. So I think, again, we can make that choice to eat healthy food, or we can make a choice to eat junk food. And this is a good opportunity to start making some of those changes. The other things I think people tend to, over consume are these sugary drinks, whether it's soda, diet soda, any of that kind of stuff. Even some of the teas and these pre-made drinks that are just loaded with sugar. We've got just mounds of research how sugar impacts your immune system, and it's not in a good way. So if you want to really suppress your immune system, eat a ton of sugary foods. So all the sugary drinks you can very easily eliminate. Water is the one fluid your body needs. So drink water. And, get into the habit of drinking water. Get your kids in the habit of drinking water. Exactly. This is a coffee cup, but it's filled with water.
Cheers to everybody out there.
We know that your hydration status, and it's interesting, one of the proposed mechanisms with, entry of COVID-19 is, your hydration status. If the mucous membranes get really dried out, does it make it easier for the virus to enter? Now, we don't really know. It's been proposed, but it makes a lot of sense that, the more sort of moisture, because you've got a layer of mucus that lines your membranes, that's a protective layer. It keeps it from getting deeper into the tissue. So the more you hydrate yourself, the more you build that layer, and it just makes it one more barrier for that virus potentially to get in you. So again, hydration, really important.
It's always really interesting. It's like we dive in these conversations and we keep saying we're going to talk about what herb to take and what this and that, but we always go back to optimizing your body's, self-healing mechanism and self-protective mechanism.
Yeah.
Seems like Mother Nature knows best.
Mother Nature really does. So, in terms of foods like not to eat, I think, those are kind of at the top of my list. In terms of what you should be eating, again, my feeling is the less hands that touch the food, the better. So, organic as much as possible, locally grown as much as possible, in season as much as possible. I'm pretty fortunate that I live in California because we grow just a ton of stuff here and things don't have to come very far to get here. So
Right.
almost all the fresh produce we get is locally sourced. So we're pretty fortunate that way. Other people live in areas where that's not as accessible, but to the best that you can. And again, I think, certain foods that, we know really help support the immune system. I'm a huge fan of mushrooms. I personally can't stand mushrooms. I don't like the taste and the texture.
Oh, you're like
but
Jill. Yeah.
yeah, I mean the squishy, texture, I'm not a fan of. But again, when you look at the health benefits, we know that they're major promoters of NK cell, natural killer cell activity. So things like shiitake, maitake, reishi, you can go buy these mushrooms at the store and just incorporate them into your cooking. So you don't have to go take a pill of mushrooms to get the benefits. We know that a lot of cruciferous vegetables, things like garlic. Garlic is a natural antimicrobial. It helps improve blood flow. It helps with inflammation. So we get these health benefits by eating literally one little clove of garlic, not the whole bulb, just one little clove a day can give you those health benefits. So adding in those other cruciferous vegetables like, broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, all of these things help with,
Nice.
liver detoxification. So, we've got these, these superfoods, if you want to think of them that way, that help a lot with our detox pathways. They do actually help boost your immune system. So again, if we can get these through food, why not?
Right on. So we're going to try to get it through our food, and and some of us are changing our habits, so we're using this time to motivate ourselves. What about, like, let's say that, like, we're working on that, but we're not the biggest veggie eaters at the moment, or maybe we are, because like for me, like I'm doing a lot of extra work, I'm still exercising, I want to just take a little extra precautions. If I'm going out there, are there like a top 2 or 3 herbs that I might want to consider, or other natural substances as a supplement? And are there any that you would say just steer clear of? Because I mean, like you said, we've all seen it on, there's so many things online about the latest, greatest cure, and medicine or herb. We know there's not really great studies at the moment, but from a background of naturopathic medicine and all your knowledge of the past, what worked for past viruses, what might you be thinking about?
Well, I think from a nutrition standpoint, our nutrients we know help support the immune system. Now, again, this is just sort of generalized immune support. We have no idea how much with the current virus it does or does not help. But vitamin C, again, I think, we've got tons of research on vitamin C's ability to help support your immune system. So even oral vitamin C can be very helpful. Vitamin A, I think, is terribly helpful because vitamin A actually helps increase what's called secretory IgA. So IgA is an immune molecule that lives in your mucous membranes. So it really is your first line of defense when you get exposed to anything that comes through something you breathe in or something you ingest. So increasing your IgA levels is a great way to help support your immune system. Vitamin D, again, tons of research on vitamin D as an immune modulator, helping shift your Th1, Th2 balance so that you get maximal Th1. Again, that's that immune fighting aspect of your immune system. And again, knowing that most, certainly Americans, tend to be vitamin D deficient anyway, having a little extra vitamin D on board. And again, we've got some pretty interesting evidence coming out with zinc, very specifically with COVID-19. It's been part of at least a couple of the small studies that have been done in conjunction with other, medications. But, zinc is, again, been known for a long time that, again, helps support the immune system and itself inhibits viral replication for some viruses. Again, we don't know about SARS-CoV-2, but it's reasonable to, I think, add zinc so that vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and vitamin A been my go-to with my patients just to help keep their immune system healthy. I put a lot of my patients on that just in the cold and flu season just to keep their immune system primed. And for people who've got a history of, having repeated, colds and flus, by and large, most people actually do pretty well with that protocol. In terms of herbs, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say one other before, and herbs is where I was going to go in a minute too. But what about quercetin? Just because everybody's talking about hydroxychloroquine, and chloroquine might be zinc ionophores, meaning they pull zinc into the cells, so it works better. Naturally, I heard quercetin can do it. Have you been thinking about that? Is the research really there, or is it just kind of like social media blitz?
Yeah, I think it's more social media blitz. Again, I'm not aware of any research specifically with quercetin and that activity. My speculation, if it does help, the amount of quercetin you would have to take would probably have to be pretty high. And when you look at doses of quercetin, because we use quercetin for allergies, it's a really good mast cell inhibitor. The doses we use for that are probably much less. So again, we don't really know what the target dose would be for quercetin. So that hasn't really been something that's been on my radar. I think there are other nutrients that probably are more efficient and work better. But I mean, if you're taking quercetin for other reasons, certainly don't think it's harmful.
Right. And so a couple questions are popping up. One about elderberry, and I think I want to make sure we keep some time. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Could you quickly say, generally, what would you generally recommend for zinc and vitamin A in terms of doses?
Yes. Yeah, so for adults, for vitamin A, it's very safe to take upwards of 25,000 IUs a day. There is potential toxicity with vitamin A. However, if you look at the research, they've done studies where they've given 150 to 250,000 IUs for 2.5 years to young adults with no signs of toxicity. But, if you start getting a headache, fatigue, joint pain, or really dry, flaky skin, that can be a sign of vitamin A toxicity, in which case, if you just lower your dose or stop it, it will go away completely. So again, I've never seen toxicity at 25,000 IUs a day, but I think it's a good dose. And when you look at vitamin A, make sure it's actually vitamin A. A lot of supplements, when they sell it, it'll say vitamin A, and you look at the label, it says in parentheses, as beta carotene. Beta carotene is technically two vitamin A molecules joined together, but they're not the same. And your body dissociates very little beta carotene into vitamin A. So if you're going to use vitamin A, actually get pure vitamin A. And you can find it through most retailers. Right. And zinc for an adult, anywhere from 30 to 50 milligrams a day is appropriate. Again, with zinc, make sure if you're going to take it with a full stomach or full meal. Zinc on empty stomach can make you very nauseous. And if you start taking zinc long-term, it can deplete copper. So if I have someone who's on zinc long-term, I do like to test their blood for zinc and copper levels and just make sure we accidentally don't start upsetting the balance.
Right. So basically, like vitamin D, vitamin A, and zinc, vitamin C in sort of standard doses are going to be safe long-term for most people, with the caveat that with zinc, we're going to want to keep an eye on the copper.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think, at 30 milligrams a day, again, depending on where you live in the world, like where we live out here and in Arizona, the copper is actually very high in the soil. When I lived in Connecticut, it was the same thing. So I never saw copper deficiency because it was just naturally in the soil. People were getting it through their local food. But it's a good idea. Again, if you're going to be on for probably more than 4 to 6 months, you might want to start checking your levels and just make sure that the balance is okay.
And then, so what about elderberry?
So elderberry, this created a
cytokine storm, dude. You're going down.
Yeah, this is a gross misunderstanding. And for people who don't really understand herbs, they sort of there was one small study that found that elderberry increased IL-6, interleukin-6, which is a pro-inflammatory cytokine. When you are sick, you want pro-inflammatory cytokines. It is part of your immune system's ability to fight the infection. That itself isn't a problem. And elderberry actually has a bigger effect on tumor necrosis alpha, which is a different molecule. So elderberry is really what we call, again, an immune modulator. If things are too low, it brings it up. And if it's too high, it brings it down. There is zero evidence, that in any human study ever, that elderberry causes cytokine storm. Right. Now, I know Stephen Buhner, who's a well-known herbalist, he's advocating not to use elderberry syrup, which is the form that most of us use it in, as a treatment for SARS-CoV-2. We have no idea if it helps or doesn't help. He's actually recommending using the leaf. We rarely use the leaf, and most commercial elderberry products are elderberry syrup. My feeling is, as a preventive, elderberry syrup is fine. And because it has so many other effects for other viruses, I think as a preventive, it's fine. If someone actually does come down with SARS-CoV-2, would I use it? Probably not. I don't think A, it's going to be strong enough, and B, we've got no evidence it's going to help at that stage or not. But if someone is taking elderberry on a regular basis just to help maybe prevent getting sick, I think it's very reasonable. But this whole thing about causing cytokine storm is a very, very rare condition. And yes, Dr. Song, I know she wrote a really good article about this that kind of explains it in more detail. So please check out her article. But again, cytokine storm is extraordinarily rare. And, even for the people who are in the hospital and on ventilator, not all of them are there because of cytokine storm. Some are and some aren't. So.
Well, I just want to throw, as someone who's spent a large part of their career in the critical care unit and in emergency rooms, that we have to be really clear. We're talking about two different types of patients here.
Yeah.
Vertical patients and horizontal patients. And vertical patients, meaning most of us listening here, I hope. And, you know, if anybody is supine and in a hospital bed, we're sending out love and healing vibes to you. But the bottom line is, when you're a vertical patient, you don't have cytokine storm and you're not even remotely close to it. I mean, this is a semi-rare event in the critical care unit. There are a bunch of questions about pediatric doses. I'm going to drop in and unfortunately, there's so many things we can talk about. I'm going to drop in an article that Dr. Song just shared with me that she wrote that has some of those dosages. So any other herbs, Darren, that you're finding really kick butt?
Yeah, so my favorite herb is called Andrographis. Andrographis is a well-documented.
Taking that.
Yeah, it's well documented against several viruses, including Epstein-Barr virus. We use it for rhinovirus, which causes the common cold. It's been a very effective herb. And it's funny because all of the companies that we work with that make Andrographis, they're all like completely sold out now. So you probably have a hard time finding it. But Andrographis is one I do recommend to keep on your shelf. It's a great go-to for anyone in the family that just gets a cold or any kind of flu-like symptoms. It can at least help shorten the course in my experience. So I'm a huge fan of Andrographis. I'm also a huge fan of an herb called Lomatium. Lomatium is one of our more potent viral or antiviral herbs. The thing about Lomatium is, and that's Lomatium, Lomatium has a component in it that can cause a little bit of a skin rash. So if you're using like a tincture form of it, just be a little bit careful. It does happen up to like 40% of people who use the herb. So it's a pretty high number. It's not dangerous. It's just annoying. There is a company called Eclectic Institute that makes a Lomatium isolate, where basically they've taken the herb, took that one component out that causes the skin rash, and they just reformulate it without that component. And I've used that for years. And again, I find when people use that at the very onset of any kind of viral illness, it nips in the bud usually pretty quickly. The other herb that I'm a big fan of is called astragalus. So astragalus, different than Andrographis. Astragalus is used a lot both in Western and Chinese medicine. And astragalus is a way of, again, helping basically boost your immune system. It does have a little bit of antiviral activity, but it probably has more of an impact again on NK cells and T cells. And again, even some of the medicinal mushrooms that are out there, so things like, cordyceps, maitake D, all of these help increase NK cell activity. So again, that's, some of these aren't directly antiviral, but the fact that they can help support your immune system, hopefully clear the virus faster, I think all of them are pretty helpful.
Awesome. One other quick question too is, what about, what are your feelings about like herbal infusions? I mean, a lot of people are making teas and stuff, and I think Buhner talks about a lot of this stuff. I mean, is that something that you're doing a lot of, or?
It really depends on the herb. Some herbs get extracted better as a tea, where, you like most teas, you steep it in warm water for, 10 minutes. Some are better as tinctures. Some are actually better as capsules. So Andrographis, because you can standardize it to a certain percent of what's called andrographylide. It's one of the active components. I think that's more effective than having it as a tea or tincture. And some of these herbs are very bitter. So they're just like, something like frankincense or myrrh, they're really good for the immune system, but they taste horrible. So, those, if you ever take them, you would want them in capsule. So, I think you have to kind of know what the herb you're dealing with. The Lomatium that we use is in a tincture form. Astragalus I've used as both capsules and tincture form. Again, you can get them as raw teas. By and large, most raw teas aren't quite as potent as tinctures or capsules. But again, it really depends on the herb. Now, echinacea, which I don't necessarily recommend for this, but echinacea is actually best as a tincture, much better than a capsule or a tea. So just depends on the herb.
Awesome. Darren, this is amazing, and we could do this forever. We might have to come back and talk more about these at some point. Lots of questions coming up. I know everybody, just as a reminder in the chat, we sent you the pediatric dosing and some of the pediatric herbals you can use from Dr. Song. Certainly, Dr. Darren Engels has an amazing book called The Lyme Solution. It actually will tell you a heck of a lot more about what's going on in the herbs and healing autoimmune conditions. I we're not going to have time to jump, I don't think, tonight in the essential oils. Dr. Song talked a little bit about it last night. And then also keep an eye on your emails, because I do have someone who wants to do like a Facebook Live or another webinar specifically on the essential oils. So Darren, one last thing is, I appreciate all the extra time. I just want to ask you about vitamin C, because that came up and I know everybody's asking, like, whole food vitamin C supplements versus synthetic C. Do you have a quick thing to send us
the
out
bottom
on?
line is vitamin C is vitamin C is vitamin C. I think it's a marketing thing that some companies, that it's food-based vitamin C. The molecule of ascorbic acid is exactly the same. There are some cases where there is a synthetic molecule that is biochemically different than its natural form, and that is not the case with vitamin C. So my feeling, if it's food-based, it's great. If it's synthetic, and synthetic isn't really synthetic. Synthetic doesn't mean that you made it chemically. That it's often synthetic just means it's extracted from a different source. So chemically, it's the same exact molecule your body sees when you eat oranges. So I'm not concerned.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, I have to hit you for one more, because Dr. Song, who's been such a big part of our community and this mini series, said, is there any specific things you're doing for PANDAS and PANS patients?
Well, again, I know we have very limited time. So the bottom line is yes. I have a lot of my PANS and PANS patients on extra doses of vitamin A. For people who are my patients, I actually use doses that are much higher than I just suggested, but because I monitor them. Vitamin A, there's a whole vitamin A protocol that Dr. Usman recommends for PANS, that it's a short-term 2-3 day, very high doses of vitamin A. You do have to monitor it, so I wouldn't recommend that you just do this on your own unless you're under the guidance of a physician. But the high dose vitamin A actually works pretty well for trying to control it. And again, all the other things we talked about just for helping their immune system, because any kind of microbial exposure does tend to set off PANS and PANDAS. So whether it's a cold virus, coronavirus, it doesn't matter. So
Right.
Again, it's still ultimately about keeping their immune system healthy. And so that's kind of been my approach. And it's very specific to the individual. So, but the high dose vitamin A has been something that's been pretty consistent with most of my kids.
Right on. And so maybe what we can do, guys, is we'll get together with Dr. Darren and Dr. Song and do a little something fun extra on PANS and PANS. And I did, for the chat, put it up there: pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome, a type of autoimmune encephalitis. And really, it's a lot like this. And we need to, what we need to do is really modulate the immune system, keep it in balance, have it functioning optimally, but not too much. And that's like a whole nother week-long course. But Dr. Darren Engels, thanks, brother. We'll do this again soon.
Thanks, Tom.
So everyone, sending lots of love to Dr. Engels. And I'd love to introduce my buddy, Tracy Gappen. He is a board certified urologist, and he's a men's health expert who focuses on providing high performance men with personalized paths to optimizing their own health. And then you might go, hey, why is he on here? And well, not only does we often focus on children and women, sometimes you got to take care of the dudes, but also Dr. Tracy here is a guy who actually had COVID-19 himself. So Tracy, thanks for joining us, and want to learn a lot more about what this thing is like.
Appreciate it, Tom. Glad to be here with you, buddy.
Yeah, man. You're looking like you're on the mends.
I'm feeling a lot better. I tell you what, it's been a rough 6 weeks or so, but I've definitely turned the corner. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. So, before we dive into some of the, what are you doing? Sort of what's your background like in terms of the way you think about these things? Because I want to take a moment and dive into COVID-19 and maybe some of the things you did that are different than a lot of people might have been exposed to. But I think if we hear a little bit about your background and the way you kind of are thinking about health optimization, it'll help us understand why you did some of the things you did.
Yeah, absolutely. So I focus on men's health, obviously. I focus on a comprehensive systems-based approach when I help men optimize their health. And what that means is I look at every system of the body to bring it together as a whole approach. And that started from in my practice, I see men come in for testosterone. It starts with testosterone. Every guy comes in saying, hey, I think I might have low T, or can I check my T, or how do I get more T, or, it's all about the T. And what I found with these men is when you improve their testosterone, they don't necessarily get better. And
Right.
so that got me down the rabbit hole many years ago of a systems-based approach of looking at the whole body in a comprehensive manner. And that's kind of how everything started, learning about epigenetics and learning how precision medicine can help us really optimize from within. And that's how everything started. That was maybe like 5 years ago or so. And so I came to this experience with COVID with a very aggressive approach toward optimizing your health, looking at not just testosterone, because testosterone is just one piece of the bigger puzzle, but looking at sleep. Most guys don't sleep well. Looking at stress, most guys have a very poor response to stress, very poor resilience, and they don't know how to manage it. And that leads to high cortisol, which affects hormones, and it affects inflammation, and it has a cascading effect, and it leads to cardiovascular disease and insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome and obesity. And there's this amazing balance of everything that has to occur to optimize health. And so I look at nutrition. I look at not just what men eat, but when they eat. I look at their detox pathways, and I look at their activity, their fitness, and obviously their hormones and mindset as well. And I put all this together to create a comprehensive approach to how to optimize their health from a personalized perspective using genetics and using their personalized genetic blueprint, because each guy is different and there's no one size fits all approach. And so I like to say that I have a very data-driven approach to optimizing men's health that I don't think a lot of people out there are doing. And there's really no one size fits all. And if you don't have a personalized approach, you're really just guessing in many ways.
So how does that translate? So I'm assuming you've done a lot of this with yourself, but how do you take this sort of this very personalized approach to an individual's, and this is kind of, I think what we're seeing with COVID-19 is we all these people we're trying to treat an individual who's reacting differently than the individual in the bed next to them. And then we're blasting it out on social media. So then we're really confused. So how do you take that and then say, hey, I'm at home, I got COVID-19. What do I do for myself? You know, do you base it on what you knew from before? Do you have to do some shotgunning? And yeah, what was your experience of it? I mean, how did it all happen?
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. I'll touch on that briefly in
Yeah.
that. Why is it that some people die? Why do some people get very sick and recover? Why do some people have mild to moderate symptoms like I had? And why do some people have no symptoms at all?
Mm-hmm.
And we're still trying to figure that out. But that really very strongly demonstrates the fact that there's some personalization here. There's some individual unique aspect of our health that has still not really been fully uncovered to explain why there's such a wide array of responses to this disease. So what do I do, and what do I tell the men who I take care of? There are general recommendations, some of which your previous guests have talked about over the last couple of days, that look at general nutrition recommendations, general sleep and stress recommendations, and those are in some ways applicable to everyone. But then I can take it one step further and really take a data-driven approach and say, well, what do your genetics show about your inflammatory biomarkers, for example? What do your genetics show when we're looking at your glutathione pathways or your superoxide dismutase and the other ways of combating an oxidative stress pathway? And so all these different data points we can use to take a very personalized approach. And so I did that for myself as well. So I track my data on a regular basis, and I can use that to implement various changes.
Right. So how did you know, how did you know you had this thing, this COVID-19?
Yeah, it jumped up on me. I'll tell you what, Tom. So I had night sweats for a few nights. Didn't really think much of it. Looking back, that was probably a signal something was wrong. I had a wet pillow when I woke up, but it was a Friday night, and we were at home. The Rugrats were in bed, and we were having our typical wild and crazy Friday night at home watching Netflix. And suddenly, out of nowhere, broke down with shaking chills and body ache and flu-like symptoms, skin hurt to the touch. Very, very acutely. Within a matter of minutes, I went from feeling completely fine to pretty significant issues.
Wow.
Obviously, my first concern was COVID, given the current environment. And so I sent my wife and kids to her mother's house, quarantined
So you got
myself.
him out like right away.
What's that?
You got him out right away.
I got them out that next morning. Yeah, the kids were in
Wow,
bed. So
awesome.
when they woke up, got them out of the house, and was able to quarantine myself. And the acute symptoms resolved within a couple of days. I'd say within 36 to 48 hours, most of the acute symptoms had cleared. I've had a persistent fatigue, this brain fog that has consumed me since then. And finally, in the last week or so, I can actually think clearly. I can actually focus on on work, focus on my family, focus on being a real person again. So it's been tough.
What's that time period been since you felt better to a week ago when your brain started to turn back on?
It was about a month. It was
Really?
about a month for it to clear. Yeah, and it got a little better every day. And there were good days and bad days. So it's been a challenge, yeah. But I just consider myself fortunate, and you see all the other people who are having much bigger problems than I went through. So I have gratitude that it wasn't
Right.
worse, but it's definitely been a challenge.
Well, it's interesting because like Jill and I, when we came back from our meeting over in Hawaii, we got back and it seemed just like that, boom. And we were traveling for another conference, and I spiked a fever. I haven't had a fever in like 25, 30 years. And we didn't, and this was before everybody was talking about it. So I just got sick and laid around and then got better. And I'm waiting for my antibody test to find out if I had it, because we both think we did.
Sure.
Honestly, it was so bad. One of the questions that Melanie asked, I think is awesome, man. Like, what about like, how did you clear the brain fog? And are there any particular supplements or treatments that you did that really kind of accelerated this? Or was it just kind of tincture of time?
Yeah, great question. I immediately jumped on peptides, and peptides are something I love talking about. That Friday night, I had already had a supply of peptides in my refrigerator in case this happened. I was already on one of the peptides as a preventive maneuver as well. And so my first action was peptides. And I truly believe that the peptides I used had a massive impact on my recovery. I could make outlandish statements that they may have saved my life, but I don't know if that actually be that dramatic. I really have no way of knowing for sure, but from the science behind them, I think peptides were definitely instrumental.
So for the people who are watching who may not know, what can you give us a synopsis of what peptides are?
Sure. Yeah. So peptides are simply chains of amino acids. So anywhere from 2 to 100 amino acids connected together is called a peptide. And peptides are natural signaling molecules in that your body recognizes these signals already. They're amino acids that your body knows, but they can be manufactured, synthesized, created to have a very specific function. And so there are peptides that are very effective for modulating, augmenting, improving the immune system. There are peptides that are incredible for helping with metabolism and weight loss, and improving, reducing inflammation, improving healing, whether
improving
that's
sleep.
You know what? There's a great peptide that my wife and I use, and I have almost every one of my clients on. It's called CJC Ipamorelin. And
yeah, brother.
Yeah, one of the first benefits of CJC within a day or two is sleep is massively improved with it. And that's through various mechanisms. It increases growth hormone releasing hormone. It increases growth hormone levels, and also does have an effect on IGF-1. And all those have pleiotropic effects where they have an effect on several areas in the body. But they're peptides for losing weight, for building muscle, peptides for gut health, peptides for joint healing and neurodegenerative diseases. And so you can pick a peptide that can have almost any function that you're looking for. And so there are certain peptides that are very specifically used to modulate the immune system.
Right.
And so that for me was really key.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's like I always hesitate to say what peptides I'm using. And don't worry, everybody who's asking, we'll repeat them in just a moment here. But because like I do a lot of chronic Lyme and pandas and PANS, and kids don't always inject themselves, and adults sometimes jump on like one of the bigger immune modulatory peptides is thymosin alpha-1. But I find that in the right time, balancing Th1 and Th2, bumping up natural killer cells, T cells, B cell function is really good. And in other times, it helps you for 2 days, and then you're back to square one because you haven't done foundational healing like your CJC ipamorelin, maybe your BPC-150 and whatever. So some of the, I want you to go over the ones that you were just talking about for a moment, but everybody, peptides should be used with a doctor through prescription. So it's through a compounding pharmacy. You can get peptides online. Don't do it. Is my recommendation. Is you have to work with your doctor on it, but it's good to know what's out there. So CJC and ipamorelin is the one you were talking about. Can you? So what do you think about immune function? Because that's the one you said for sleep, right? What about it? What's your feeling? What it does?
Yeah, so when we're looking at immune function, thymosin alpha-1, the one that you mentioned, is amazing. It's been around for a long time. I think actually over 20 years. It's been used in HIV patients. It's been used in hundreds of clinical trials. And what it does is it increases Treg cell function, increases natural killer cell function. It's been shown to have antiviral, direct antiviral effects as well. And so it's a great immunomodulating peptide. That's one that I personally was taking before I got infected with coronavirus, which I think probably had something to do with my
Because you said like 2-3 days, right? You were better.
Yeah, it was 36, 48 hours tops, and all the acute symptoms were gone. I had a fever, a temperature of 100.0, never went above that. So I never had a true fever. And I recovered very quickly. You know, I was back to work within a week doing telemedicine, but nonetheless working.
Right.
When I could have been in an ICU on a ventilator, you know, without these, I don't know. So TA or thymosin alpha-1 is a great peptide for immune function as a preventative maneuver. It can also be used if you get infected. So I was taking it at a very low dose before I got infected. That night, that Friday night, I immediately massively bumped it up to the therapeutic dose. I also added a couple other peptides, which are amazing for their antiviral effect. LL37 is a great one. It does affect viruses from attaching to cells as well as entering cells, as well as it has.
Which is kind of interesting because you can use that for gut you know, issues, right? And it's a great antimicrobial. And I've also screwed people up royally when their gut wasn't ready to be microbialized, if that's a word, with LL37. So, but now that you mention it, that's kind of interesting too, because we're seeing that the ACE2 receptor is really high in the lining of the respiratory tree, but also on the enterocytes, the cells in the gut lining.
Right. Exactly.
And we talked about that with Elisa last night.
Yeah. So, you know, you bring up a great point that I think is worth emphasizing here, in that peptides are not a magic pill, and people will come to me wanting a peptide to cure their ail or their ill. But in reality, it's the icing on the cake. You know, you need to take care of what you just said, the foundational measures. You know, you need to have a good quality lifestyle when it comes to your nutrition and your stress resilience, and you know, your fitness and staying active, and it all starts with that, with lifestyle. And then the peptides are a great adjunct or an additive maneuver. But I want to caution people from thinking that that's the cure, and that you know, certainly peptides are not going to cure COVID, but they're going to, with all the other health optimization approaches that I really practice and preach, this is the icing on the cake.
Well, and I think what's really cool, and I really want to highlight for people, is what Tracy is saying is you came into this working to always optimize yourself. One of the tools in your tool pouch, your tool belt, are peptides, but you're also doing the diet, the lifestyle, looking at the genetics. And so it doesn't always necessarily mean you need to have peptides, but they're a tool that, working with your healthcare provider, you can have. And because you happen to be already having a really strong baseline and you knew what you're doing because you happen to be the doctor prescribing, you could go ahead and do it. But I really like the way because I don't want anybody to miss that little piece where you're like, hey, you know what? I actually was working on all this before. And like, I like what you said, this is the icing on the cake, but the hard work is the work you're doing yourself. Like we've been talking with everyone else.
Absolutely.
So I want to spend what is this like in your family? Because one, you woke up the next day and you kicked your family out, which is, I think, the right thing to do. But a couple questions. How did it impact the rest of your family? And then I know some people were asking, did you get a positive test? What kind of test did you do? And what have you done subsequently around testing? And that last part's a little bit.
Great point. So it's fascinating that my wife never developed any symptoms whatsoever. We were around each other up until that Saturday morning, and she never got any symptoms at all. My kids, they're 4 and 6. They never had any problem either. My mother-in-law, who was around us quite a bit in the week leading up to that, she's 70 years old and she had no symptoms either. So I don't know if we have great genes. I don't know if it was sheer luck or what it was that they got no symptoms whatsoever. But I was very fortunate that I was the only one and my recovery was fairly quick. As for testing, this is a fairly interesting aspect of the story. I called the local epidemiologist. He's an infectious disease doctor who's a close friend of mine, and told him the situation, told him that I think I might have COVID and I need to get tested. But this was after I'd already called the health department and they said there's no local testing unless you're admitted to the hospital. And I tried both counties, Sarasota and Manatee counties locally here, and neither one could I get tested. So I went to him as a last resort saying, hey, doc, I need to get tested, so I don't potentially expose my patients to this.
Right.
So I canceled my patients that Monday and went and got tested. And I was able to get a test only because I'm a physician, only because I needed to get tested to find out if I had it so that I don't risk it. I need to take care of my patients, but at the same time, I wanted to be safe. So got the test done, canceled patients Tuesday, Wednesday, figure I'll get the test back Wednesday, I'll be fine, and then get back to work Thursday. Well, Tom, I didn't get my test back for 10 days. 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I had to stay quarantined for 10 days until that time that I got the positive test result the following Wednesday. And fortunately, I had stayed home, quarantined throughout that time. I was doing telemedicine with my patients. And this really, ushered in, I really believe, a new era in medicine with telemedicine, because up until now, it was really thought of kind of this cool tool, but it wasn't really implemented on a wide scale. Now I'd say 2/3 of my practice is telemedicine. Because patients are afraid of coming in the office or they're sick at home or whatever. So during that time, I stayed home, I self-isolated, I practiced telemedicine, and I really had no more acute symptoms other than that fatigue and brain fog.
Yeah. So eventually the PCR test came back positive.
Yeah.
Which, and to me, it's frustrating because, here we are, we're trying to, we need to test people who really need to get tested because they're sick and hospitalized, but that completely skews all the data,
Right.
because we're only testing high risk people. So we're missing out on, you could have potentially been missed. I would have not qualified for a test.
Right.
So what happened after, though? I think this is really cool. What happened afterwards? Because I contacted you last week about some additional testing, and it sounds like you're helping a lot of people out right now.
Yeah. So we are one of the centers throughout the country that are starting a clinical trial doing convalescent serum donor clinical trial, where I will be donating serum to infected sick patients in the hospital. So as part of that, I did have to get retested. So I got retested last week. The COVID test did come back negative this time around, which was good to see. I assumed it would be negative, so it was negative. And so now I'm waiting for the antibody test to come back now. And once that comes back, I'll be able to donate and be part of that trial and hopefully save some lives.
Yeah, that is so good. It's just so amazing. Now, a couple people have asked questions, and I don't know. I mean, I know what my thoughts are. I want to know because there's only so much research one person can look through. But have you seen anything about COVID-19 and blood type affecting symptoms? Because I know there's a lot of talk about this from one really poorly done paper, but
Yeah, I've seen some talk on social media about it, about blood type A. I don't know that there's any solid data on that. I have not seen any really solid science to show why one blood type would potentially get affected more than others. Yeah.
yeah. And have you heard about the whole? I mean, again, this is like blood stuff, but there's the whole methemoglobinemia question, and what's your take on that one? And maybe you can explain what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, you bring up a great point. So, initially we were looking at this as a typical systemic inflammatory response and treating it as such. And people were getting put on a ventilator and they were not responding. And what's been fascinating to see that we've learned through this process is that there's a hypoxemic aspect of these patients where they're not oxygenating well, and it has to do with the hemoglobin and how the virus is affecting the hemoglobin's ability to bind to oxygen and deliver it throughout the body. And so that really changes our approach to how we manage this disease. It's fascinating what we've been able to learn. Unfortunately, lives have been lost in the process, but this is not a typical pneumonia type picture.
Yeah, it is totally different. I mean, so from your experience going through this, I mean, a couple people have mentioned in the chat that they currently have COVID-19. Like I said, I mean, I'm almost positive. I've had it. My wife's had it. Maybe that means my daughter. I know Dr. Song was telling us about her children having it, and maybe her and her husband. I mean, what would you tell somebody going through it? Because it sounds like for you, it was like the symptoms hammered you right away, like out of the blue. And I mean, personally, I was scared shitless. I was traveling and I was so sick. So what do you do? What's it feel like a human being who has all your doctor knowledge?
It's definitely scary. You're right. It's scary to let your mind wander. I think what is awful is fear. I think what is very detrimental is fear. I think that, I don't want to get woo-woo here, but there's certainly power of mindset. And so I think staying focused on what you need to do to optimize your health and stay focused on what's important matters. So number one, sleep. I honestly think, sleep is underlooked. I think that quantity and quality of sleep is massive when it comes to recovery for this. I think eating well. I think micronutrients are important. I know you've talked to a lot of other guests about, vitamin D is significant. I know vitamin A and zinc are very important as well. So when you get the disease, when you are infected and you have symptoms, we don't really know. We don't really have a solid treatment. Obviously, we're still trying to figure that out.
Right.
But I think there are a lot of things that you can do to hopefully mitigate the symptoms and hopefully improve your recovery. And a lot of it is augmenting and improving your immune function.
Awesome. Well, I couldn't have put it better myself. And I love your segue about the mindset woo-woo, because that's where we're moving with our next two guests. And Tracy, thank you so much for coming to share your personal experience with all of this. And thank you for, donating blood and the serum and all this to help so many other people, both with developing antibody testing and developing, the convalescent serum is remarkable. So, thank you for everything you do. I'm so grateful that you're here and that you're on the front lines, and I'm so glad you're recovering too.
You got it, Tom. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. This is fantastic.
All right. We'll talk soon, man.
You got it, Tom.
Everybody, Dr. Tracy Gapin, such an amazing trooper. And so a couple questions popped up about certain types of antibody tests, finger pricks and stuff like that. The bottom line is all of this is new. And it's more and more is coming out every day. So keep an eye on that and look for that. And so next, I want to introduce a really good friend of mine and a person who has helped me through some tough times and helped some friends of mine through some tough times, Dr. Joan Rosenberg. And we're going to try to roll her in here. And she's a psychologist and the author of 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. She has an amazing couple TED Talks online, talking about some of the work, but we've got her front and center and live here, and she's going to help us discover how to master our difficult feelings, build confidence and resilience, and create more meaning in our lives. So Dr. Joan Rosenberg, what's happening?
I'm just with you, bud. So it's just
We're back at it.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being here.
You bet.
I always love, like, when we can start off a conversation being, told that it's time to get into the woo-woo, because it's funny, last night we were talking, and in the beginning we were talking about sort of the mental, emotional aspects with children and how to manage that stuff at home and ourselves and our kids. And someone was like, are we going to get to the medicine? And so Dr. Elisa Song was so good and said, the most important thing you can do for your immune system is the mental health and the emotional aspect. And I was just like, oh, this is why I love this group of people. We have everybody who's talking about, it's really hardcore medicine, but part of hardcore medicine is all of us, not just the physical part. So
absolutely right. And we're one unit. We're not a brain and a mind and then separated from the body. It's an integrated experience. We're one integrated whole. So yay for say Elisa, thank you so much, and yay for the comment. So thank you, Darren, as well. So
yeah, and I mean, Joan is amazing, guys. Like, I mean, I'm somebody who's like so enthusiastic, and I get going. And I'm like, I think when you stand up in front of a group of people, to keep them going, you gotta be energized and loud and moving around. And then I heard Joan talk, and she's quiet and calm. And I'm like, yeah, Yoda, exactly, Darren. Darren just said, you're like Yoda. It's crazy. It's like, everyone has to stop and listen, because you speak from a place of deep knowledge and love and compassion. So, which is another reason, we have to be having this conversation.
All right. Thank you. Very, very kind. Thank you. Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, one of the hardest things about all this is we're having emotions we've never had before. And
go ahead.
They're presenting themselves maybe in a way that seems like they might be different than something we've had before.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is we're having an experience we've never had before.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the way, part of the way I think about it is that we have this very insidious, invisible virus that we don't know a whole lot about, and we have this economic downturn simultaneously. So, as if those two things weren't bad enough, we have. I just lost my thought. Sorry. As if those two things weren't bad enough, we don't have a place to put this experience, and it's global, right? So it's not just happening in one place, and it's very contained. It's that it's global and it's uncontained, and most all of us are affected one way or another. If it's not directly, we're at least being indirectly affected because of what we're going through. So when I think about this time, it's actually a period of profound loss.
Yeah.
And it's like, and bear with me for a moment. And I don't mean to be somber here, but I think if we just put it out there, it's not that we haven't had the feelings before. We haven't had this kind of an experience before. Right. We've had the feelings that relate to it, but not necessarily the experience itself. So when we have an unfamiliar experience, then the brain's going, where do I put this? Because the way our brain works is to look for a past experience to make sense of the present experience. And none of us have gone through this before. Right. And then people have gone through ration periods and those kinds of things, if we look at World War II or something, some members of our society have been through certain things, but all of us together have never been in this thing at this time in this way. So it's understanding that kind of facing multiple losses, and that what a lot of us are facing is actually grief, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And grief. And the other big one that I will talk about, because most people will talk about feeling fearful or anxious, we're actually experiencing a time not only of feeling more vulnerable, but maybe also having an awareness of our vulnerability that we didn't have before.
It's interesting because that was the word that, out of all your work, when we read your book and I hear you talk, that word is not a word that people seem to like to use, and you use it a lot. And every time you say it, it hits me right in the chest, and I listen. Like, what is it about that, like, vulnerability?
Well, here's the thing. Let me really quickly walk through how I think through some of this. The body of my work is centered around people's ability or people's capacity to handle or experience and move through 8 unpleasant feelings. And most of us will talk about being fearful at this time. But if I think about fear, psychology says fear is danger in the moment right now. So for those of us who are sheltered, have food, have friends and family, and have some finances, then we're okay. We're not in fear. So please don't use the word fear, because if you use that word, and this goes to what you and Darren were talking about earlier, with Michael Bernoff's work, it's the language you use is important. So let's not use fear. The next most obvious, Tom, is going to be anxiety. Again, makes sense. The idea of anxiety is that it's worry about some bad event happening in the future. If I make it really simple. So, okay, that makes sense. Except if I asked 10 people about what they understood about anxiety for themselves, they'd give me 10 different answers. So it's kind of this cloudy, ephemeral sort of experience. Though we feel it in our body, it's sort of diffuse. But what's really happening, from again using the word that I like to use, is this idea of vulnerability. This notion that's like, oh, I could get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And when tragedy or trauma or unexpected circumstances happen, we tend to feel more vulnerable. When Kobe Bryant died, or we can look at incidents like that, what did it do? It heightened our awareness of vulnerability. This idea that one, that change is the constant, and 2, that anything can happen to anybody at any time. So what I think people are going through is not only, again, this experience of dealing with grief around all the losses, but it's also this idea of having a whole different experience of and awareness of our own vulnerability.
It's interesting too, because as you're saying that, I think about communicating with my family, and less so with patients and my staff, because there's sort of this a little separation, but it comes in with all of it. Is vulnerability is one of the hardest things I think for me to do. Is to be able to openly communicate. You're pretty vulnerable, and even tonight before I got on, I was just like, tonight is like wrapping up 3 nights, so many amazing speakers, special guests. And this is just something that means so much to me, but boy, it's hard to really just open and be vulnerable. And I think we're being, like you said, we haven't had this experience, and it's our awareness of our vulnerability is dramatically different.
If we choose into that awareness. And that's the one thing that of many that I would invite people to be aware of. It's again, so let me walk through, because there's layers to this one too. And so to your point about like doing the series, that's a kind of vulnerability that you're choosing into, and choosing vulnerability like this is what I consider a person at their greatest strength. So I separate that out from the kind of vulnerability, a little bit from the kind of vulnerability I'm talking about. We're all vulnerable all the time. Anything can happen in a moment. And for most of us, it's hard to have that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. And I wouldn't suggest that people live with it right in front of them like this the whole time, because you won't want to live. It'll make it harder to go do things and take risks and to live life. So I wanted some awareness so that you can choose to live life more fully.
Yes.
And to make more active choices about who you want to be and what you want to do, and then which will be tied hopefully into what your special guest will talk about as well. And so I'm almost positive she'll go there. So I'll say that.
I think so.
But let me walk through the layers of the vulnerability for a moment too. So it's, again, are we more vulnerable? Yes, we have this virus and this economic downturn. We don't know who's going to get the virus. We don't know who's not going to get the virus. When it hits, we don't know how it's going to turn out, right? So are we more vulnerable from a very conscious level? Yes. But what's big thing that's changed is people experience their vulnerability now.
Mm-hmm.
People are aware that they have this, I could get hurt. The sense of that. What's also changed is now, and I'm just going to get a little woo-woo. So to Tracy's point, to Tracy's point, there's another level of awareness. And the next level of awareness is, I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm aware that I feel like I could get hurt. But if we take it the next woo-woo level, then it's not only am I aware, not only am I feeling it, not only am I aware that I'm feeling it, but what has also changed is the degree of my awareness of my own vulnerability.
So when we feel these things,
yes,
because we're all feeling it, and I mean that's what I think your expertise. I mean, you're obviously an expert in lots of things, but that is like, how do I feel that? Because like I think what happens is, like, you have a feeling. If you have a plan for it of like how you're going to experience the feeling, maybe it's going to go a little bit better than if you don't have a plan going into it.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But like, how do you experience vulnerability or the feelings that are coming up in a constructive way rather than a destructive way?
Well, destructive is avoidance. Destructive is shutting down and withdrawing and just disappearing or distracting and disconnecting. And destructive way is also becoming explosive and rageful and only irritable and that kind of thing. Or another destructive is to use maladaptive coping strategies. So staying checked out by shopping, staying checked out by just viewing pornography, staying checked out by eating, staying checked out by any kind of substance use, right? So there's all sorts of ways for us to not handle feelings well. But the approach that I've taken is, again, as I said a moment ago, is centered around one's capacity to deal with 8 unpleasant feelings. And the feelings I very frequently talk about in my work are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration. And those are feelings all of us have felt. And
Right.
So it's like, and it's not the pleasant ones, because most of us do pleasant ones well. So and what you'll find is that once you have the idea of how to use this, your ability or your capacity to move through unpleasant feelings then becomes liberating.
Yeah.
So that part of what we're seeing with all the big changes, the homeschooling and the again, people losing work or worries about food sources or all that kind of stuff, and the irritability or the anger that we see, there's sadness and grief and helplessness underneath that, right?
Yeah.
So it's people then heightening their own awareness of what's really going on for them. So what I want people to do is to choose into awareness as opposed to avoidance. And I use a formula when I talk about this all the time. And the formula is 1 choice, 8 feelings, 90 seconds.
Okay.
So what I'm going to encourage people listening is like, we're not choosing avoidance. We're choosing awareness, because awareness is going to be much more effective in helping you move through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So to your question, so now we have, so the one choice is the awareness as opposed to avoidance. I've highlighted the 8 feelings. And again, why these 8 feelings is because they're the most common everyday spontaneous reactions to things not turning out the way that we need or the way we want. So it's the everydayness of these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way to help people understand, so the method, if you will, for people to understand about how to experience them more effectively, because we're leaning into them,
Yep.
is to understand that the way most of us experience or feel an emotional feeling, to feel emotionally, is through bodily sensation. So the easiest way to understand is somebody that's embarrassed, that has a heat oftentimes at the chest, into the neck, and then into the face. That's the bodily sensation.
Mm-hmm.
And what Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor said at one point, she's a Harvard trained neuroscientist. She made an observation that actually when feelings get triggered and activate those bodily sensations, there's a rush of biochemicals into the bloodstream and then a flush out of the bloodstream that's roughly an upper range of 90 seconds.
Ah.
So
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so then I just have to be there with these emotions for about a minute to a minute and a half.
Well, what I want to say is, yeah, I want to say yes, sort of. Yeah, yes. So what it would be is to understand this, and this is where a turning point in my own awareness occurred. What I realized, it's not, because one of the questions I wrestled with as a psychologist is what made it so difficult for people to experience unpleasant feelings. And what dawned on me is that we want to experience them because we feel more authentic and more whole when we do. What we don't want to experience is the bodily sensation that helps us know what we're feeling emotionally. Right? So we don't want to feel the heat in our face. And we don't want other people to see the redness, right? Or we don't want to feel the downward sensation in our chest when we're sad or disappointed, or the heat at the back of the neck when we're angry, right? Whatever the sensation is for you as an individual, that's what people want to distract and get away from. That's why the eating and the pornography and the shopping and that, right? That's because I don't want to feel those sensations. So the main thing that I want people to understand in terms of being able to effectively handle these emotions that are getting stirred up, and mostly unpleasant ones right now, I wouldn't say mostly. Let me correct that. Many unpleasant ones, because we can choose into a whole array of really positive ones too. This is a time of great gratitude and other really great stuff. So for those struggling with the unpleasant ones, then what I would say is understand the key to doing this is to lean into them. The one choice, awareness, lean into them, understand we're only talking about 8. And then the third is to understand that you need to ride one or more short-lived bodily sensation waves, because they kind of come in waves. So it's not just one wave of 90 seconds. It's going to be one or more short-lived bodily sensation waves. And that can help you stay present to the feelings. And then you're bound to get insights and other ways to think and to handle what's going on.
That's incredible. You know, everyone, we threw up, a couple people put links up there, including myself, to Joan's book. 90 Seconds to a Life You Love is absolutely a game changer for me. I've said this a million times, but by the time I got through chapter 2, my life was completely changed. I didn't even have to finish the whole book. I've now read the book almost 5 times, but chapter 2, man, I got done that and I could immediately apply everything that Joan just talked to me about and talk to all of us about. So Joan, you mentioned we have a special guest.
Yes, we do.
And, you know, I figured the first time I got to meet our special guest, I heard you introducing her.
Yeah.
And so I thought that it would be wonderful if you could share a little something to warm us all up for our guest, and then because you know, it just blew my mind when you introduced her last time.
Oh, got it. Well, I wished I'd had that introduction in my head, but I mean, am I saying the name or not saying the name?
You can do whatever you like
Okay. All
because
right.
she's coming on just now. So
Okay. Oh, sweet. Okay. Well, the guest that Tom is bringing on is a cherished friend and mentor of mine, and I would say that that's true for countless different people. The first time I heard, and her name is Mary Morrissey, and she's been in the personal development industry for better than 4 decades, and has studied intensively those areas. And I am I think it's super important for me to have a mentor, because I want to be doing the best I can do. And Mary is definitely she's right up at the top. So and so the first time I heard Mary speak, I've told her this a few different times. I actually felt like what happened for me is that I went into a little bit of a like an altered state, a little bit of a trance. I was kind of
uh-huh.
I was kind of hypnotized by what was taking place, not intentionally. It's like I could just feel myself shift. And what ended up happening is that the whole talk, that whole first time I heard her speak, I felt like I was listening to someone who was telling the truth with a capital T.
Mm.
And so I just Mary is she walks her talk, and she exudes love and truth, and I can't and wisdom, and I can't imagine anybody better than to have her come speak to your group now.
Oh, thank you so much, Joan.
Thank you, Joe.
Of
So
course.
grateful.
I-
Hi,
you know how
Mary.
much I love you.
I love you too. Hi, Tom. Nice to be
Hi,
here.
how are you? Great to see you.
Great,
Hey,
nice
so
to-
everybody, you know, I just have to say something. Like the other day, I got a call from Mary that said that she could come and make it and be part of this with us. And then I had a phone conversation with her, and I got off the call, and I said to my daughter, "Do you know who I just talked to?" And she's like, "Mary, Mary." And we had just watched one of her programs and called Dream Builder, and we're doing it as a family. And our 10-year-old daughter immediately just saw the truth and the power and the love and compassion of Mary. And the reason I wanted to really have her come and join us is not only that she inspires our family, but I didn't want to end our mini series. I want to really allow this time, like we've all been talking, to be a new beginning. And I want her to help us learn how powerful we are and where we can go in the future. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm happy to be with each one of you.
Oh, it's so great to see you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of what's been going on, you know, in your life and COVID-19 and how it's been playing a role?
Well, I live in California, so we were the first, I think, maybe among the first in the whole country to go into quarantine. So in terms of, just I have clients all over the world. As all of us have family, clients, people that we care deeply about, and just you can't be in this without feeling, Teilhard de Chardin, who wrote The Phenomena of Man, he said that the earth has not only an atmosphere, but a thoughtmosphere. And when you have billions of people who are frightened, you can walk in a room and 2 people have been fighting and they're not fighting anymore, but you can feel the energy of that. And when the world has been frightened and the world is frightened, there's an energy. So how do you keep your head above, notice that energy, but also be able to generate your own ability to think and feel in ways that are generative to you? Yes, we all spend a period of our time, feeling all of these feelings. And Joan is the master in helping us know how to deal with unpleasant feelings. And there's another side to us. There's more to us than that. And I've spent the last 30 plus years in the field of transformation and helping people know how to make changes in their lives, lean into their dreams, and understand the art and the science of transformation. Lots of people want to change their lives, but the system that we all have access to by which it occurs is not that easy to find unless you know it. I'd like to just begin, Tom, tonight to just say, I know this wonderful community you're speaking to. I didn't just drop in knowing about transformation. I was diagnosed with a fatal kidney disease.
Right, right.
18 years old. I had got married. I got married pregnant late in high school. Got kicked out of high school because I was now pregnant. I went to finish my high school with pregnant girls and delinquent boys. My high school boyfriend had come home on spring break. I get pregnant. And now it's the following year. And my son had been born in December, and I graduated from that evening high school in May. And now it's July, and I'm in an intensive care ward in a Portland hospital diagnosed with fatal kidney disease. One kidney was totally destroyed with nephritis. The other kidney had 50% destruction, active nephritis. And in
Right.
1967, no, there was not dialysis or transplants available, and this was a death sentence. And wonderful medical people, all very, very sad to tell this 18-year-old she's not going to be able to raise her son, that the best they can do for her is if we can get the blood toxin level in my body reduced enough to remove, so I can sustain the surgery to remove that right kidney,
Yep.
then maybe I'll have 6 months to live.
Wow.
And the night before the surgery, a woman walked in my room identifying herself as, I know we're using the term woo-woo tonight, so this will fit perfectly in that part of the story. Identifying herself as a chaplain, offering prayer for people who were having surgery the next day. She said she gets the list of the surgeries that are going to happen the next day in the order of their seriousness.
Mhm.
My name was at the top of the list.
Oh boy.
And she asked me if I wanted someone to pray with me. The God of my upbringing was not a friendly place to go when you felt like you really screwed up. And I was sure
Right.
I'd screwed up. I got kicked out of high school. My best friends' mothers wouldn't let my best friends see me anymore. And so but I was so scared. I have this little boy I want so much to raise or see. And I just said, please pray with me. She pulled her chair next to my bed and she did nothing that was anything I knew of as prayer. She talked to me. And she asked me, would you be willing to tell me what's been going on in your life the last year or two? Now that can be a much more standard question today in our medical community, that we understand
Yeah.
that the vibration someone has been in, the story of their life, has a great deal to do with their immune system, how deeply they breathe, all kinds of things are part of that story. I knew nothing about this. I just told her my story, at the end of which she looked at me compassionately. And then she said, Mary, everything's created twice. I had no idea what she was talking about.
Right.
And then she said, you know this. Everybody knows it. Almost nobody knows the power of knowing this. And then she said, the bed you're laying on, the nightgown you're wearing, the sheet covering you, the walls, the ceiling, the floor, all this machinery you're hooked up to, first, it had to be a thought before it could be a thing. And then she said, you know this. So now that you're considering how everything starts with thought, could you, and she said, I hear your story. I hear how much you love your little boy, but I also hear in that story how much you've been hating yourself. You feel like you
Wow.
shamed yourself, you shamed your school, you shamed your family. And now that you're considering how everything is created twice, could you consider that there could be a correlation between that toxic thinking and the toxicity that is rampaging your body and threatening your very life? No, but this is before there was a mind body clinic at Harvard Medical Teaching Center. I mean,
Right.
this is 50 plus years ago. And nobody I knew thought this way. And so this was all happening very fast. It was like, what? And then she said, could you believe that in the universe with, infinite numbers of possibility, could you believe that there could be a possibility where you could get well? And nobody had even suggested that there could be a possibility.
Right.
And long before Max Talbot wrote Holographic Universe out of Stanford, or David Bohm or Sheldrake, any of this. So then she said, so if you could live, what would you do? And I said, well, if I could live, I would raise my little boy and I would become a teacher. I'd always wanted to be a teacher. And my plan had been, I saw getting pregnant as a detour for sure, and getting married young, but I had still planned to have my son
Be a
and
teacher.
child and then go ahead and go to college and become a teacher. But now that was all completely, those hopes were gone. And then she said, okay, so you know that if you think embarrassing thoughts, your cheeks get red. And you know that if you think scary enough thoughts, your heart beats faster.
Yeah.
So now that we're considering, there could be a correlation between your self-loathing thoughts and this, what's going on in your body. And she said, so here's what I want you to do. In the morning, they're going to do the surgery. They're going to remove that kidney. When you wake up from that, the first day, 2, 3, you're going to be focused on the pain that you're feeling and recovering.
Mm.
As that passes and you start to feel a little better, the mind is very much like a rubber band. And it will be, you're tempted to go down the well-worn paths of thinking that you always think.
Mm-hmm.
So those self-loathing thoughts are going to come back. When the self-loathing thought, you have notice, you've got to notice what you're noticing. Joan referred to this. In awareness, you have the feeling, but if you notice that you're having a feeling, you now have a part of you that isn't engaged who can notice it. Once you can notice what you're noticing,
Mm-hmm.
you could actually begin to actually steer your own ship. So but I didn't know any of this. She just said, so here's what I want you to do. When a self-loathing thought comes, because we're going to take all that energy, Marion, we're going to place it in that kidney that's going to get removed. Would you be willing to just pretend that could happen?
Right.
And then when you start to think of self-loathing thought, you say to that thought, no, that left with the kidney. And then immediately imagine you've got a little boy's hand in yours. He's 5 years old. You're walking up into a school and there's a kindergarten teacher and greeting your little boy and he turns and hugs you.
Mm.
Feel that feeling. Notice that the moment that you start to feel the feeling, you have a resonance inside you. Then he goes into that little kindergarten class and you go down the hall, click, click, click with your heels around the corner, and there's your first classroom. Then fast forward in your mind, and you're sitting in a big auditorium or a great big stadium, and down on the ground are all these caps and gowns, and they call your son's name, and he walks across the stage and gets his diploma and waves it up, and you're feeling such pride and happiness and joy at his accomplishment and for you having played roles along the way to help him have this.
Mm.
And your teaching career is growing. Then fast forward in your mind and you're sitting in the front row of a wedding, and it's your son's wedding, and he's marrying the love of his life, and you're the mother of the groom, and your teaching career is flourishing. And I must have been Tom, I must have just been an unconscious competent. I
Right.
ultimately, I was doing what she said, but I wasn't aware enough to notice that I was really
Mhm.
doing it. And within a couple of weeks, what happened is after the surgery, the doctor said to my family that was gathered, my young husband and my parents, that one kidney was totally destroyed with nephritis. The other is withered, 50% destroyed. We don't know how much time she's going to have. And within a couple of weeks, my numbers had stabilized. They were no longer descending, and
Wow.
or in whatever way they measure it. And they said, maybe you're going to have a little longer than we thought. And so with certain protocols of getting into the urologist numerous times, several times a week, if you want to go home for a little while, you can. So I went to my parents' house, and my husband and son had been staying there so they could take care of my little boy. I went home in an ambulance. I was so weak, I couldn't even lift my head off the pillow.
Huh.
But I did what I was doing, what she told me to do. And over time, my numbers not only stabilized, they slightly started to improve and improve and improve and improve. And to the point where one day we're coming home from the urologist, and there's a community college. And I asked my mother, could you stop and just go get the catalog? And let me just look at the
What?
catalog
Oh,
as if I could do this. And again, unconscious, competent in this. And then about 6 months, 5 or 6 months after this surgery, I'm sitting in a meeting with the urologist and the surgeon and the general practice GP that I had and some other people, and they're just scratching their heads saying, we have no science for what's happened with you. Your one
Because
kidney
this is medically impossible, right? Apparently, but apparently it's not.
We have no science for this, but
Yeah.
so we're going to put medical anomaly, and we don't know how long this will last, by the way. We don't know how long this will last. And so we're just going to put medical anomaly on this and, come back in 3 months, come back in 6, and eventually it was once a year, and then it was no more. And that was over 50 years ago. It
Well, I'll
didn't-
tell you one thing, Mary, if I may, sign me up for medical anomaly all day long with you.
Wouldn't we all love that? Wouldn't we all love that? Yeah, yeah. So I didn't really, I was young, I was busy, but several years later, when I was getting my undergraduate work, things began to come together for me. And I got very, very interested in the science of transformation. This is, how does this occur that someone can have one set of results and literally change those results? Does it just happen to you? It just in the right place at the right time? Is luck real?
Mhm.
It's not that. It's the vibration we're coming from. And so my encouragement to all of us tonight, we're in a pandemic. We can't change that, but we can change how we're going to be in a pandemic so that not all our time is in sadness and resistance. And there's many, many things happening now, but even more importantly, and I believe, having worked with clients from all over the world and all walks of life, in the absence of a vision, your energy doesn't have, your soul force doesn't have any direction to move in.
Mm.
Every time you've felt progress in your life, it's because you had some kind of a vision for your life, whether it was get through med school and you
Right.
harnessed your energy in service of something that you saw as life-giving, as something that was more life to you. That
Yeah.
very power that breathes us is not just our heart. There's an energy that you and I live in and move in, and we didn't create ourselves. And life itself is seeking to express greater life by means of itself. That's what that virus is doing. It's wanting to live. So
Right.
it infiltrates and tries to, all of life is seeking to live. Life is pressing through a blade of grass today, seeking to be a better blade of grass. The difference between blades of grass and bushes and trees and you and me is that we have a choice. We can
Mm.
divert that energy. We can slow it down. I'll do it when it's convenient. I'll pay attention to what's really going on inside of me. And what happens is life itself then must show us signs of unlived life. And we develop symptoms to try to get our attention.
Ah. Yeah, I mean, I just think of like so many of my patients, it's like their symptoms they come out at the weirdest times in their lives. They're like, oh, I had this thing happen. And it's kind of like almost like a giving up time or a change where they got hurt. And then out of this, somehow apparently not, symptoms that have nothing to do with it, some different disease shows up. In fact, I had that conversation with someone today, and I was just like, this is not a coincidence. So how do we go back? Because it's the COVID-19 pandemic is something new. And it's hard. Sometimes we tell people you can actually change the way you go through this. You can change your outcome. And then, some people don't always hear that easily. But how can we go about doing that, so that we can get on the other side of this?
Well, here's the interesting thing, that I was changing my outcome the minute I was imagining walking my little boy into kindergarten. I felt better in that I couldn't get my head off. It hadn't changed my conditions yet, but I felt better in the moment. And why having a vision for your life or goal for your life, or I like the term dream,
Mm.
because pretty much we know how to accomplish goals. We may not be doing it. We may
Yeah.
not get ourselves to do the thing that we say we're going to do, but you do know what to do. The difference between a goal and a dream is you don't actually know how to create that. You would love it, but you don't know how to do it. So create a dream. There's an art and a science to dream building, not just dreaming. Lots of people dream.
Right.
They don't understand the science of turning that vibration into their results. So the vision part is blueprinting. It's like, what would I love? And that's a really important question to ask yourself privately. You and you. What would I really love? Because humans manifest results in 4 different arenas of life. You could build many subsets under these 4 main areas, but you don't get to not have health results. You just keep breathing and you're going to have health results.
Yeah.
You will create relationship results. You could be a hermit and that's your relationship results. You could have a beautiful connection with someone. You will generate relationship results with your children, your coworkers, your community, And you will have relationship results in a human experience. And you will create results with whatever you do with your time and talent, whether you earn income doing it or not. You will have results in what you do with your time and talent. Use it, misuse it, don't use it, and you'll create results. And you will create results in this thing called freedom, how free in life you are, how free you are able to go where you want to go and do what you want to do and contribute to what you really want to contribute, or how contained and constricted you are. And all we have to do right now is take a moment and look at our current results in health and relationships and vocation. Whether you earn income or not, you're doing something with your time and talent, and how free you are.
Yeah.
And some of us find ourselves really robust and even wealthy in one arena, like our career, but bankrupt or not so fulfilled in our health or relationships or money. And so there's a way to design a life, but everything's created twice. It has to be created in mind first for you to even know how to, and then as you put it on as an imaginal life, there's a vibration to it. There's a vibratory signature to it. So think about our wonderful system here. We have a brain, a binary brain. The connection part is the corpus callosum. There's a fluid that goes around the brain and up and down the spinal cord. You don't get to not think. Nobody does.
Right.
Every thought has a frequency to it. That electrical pulse communes and communicates with the fluid. It goes up and down the spinal cord, and it sends that vibration to every muscle, every cell, every tissue, every fiber, every organ, and it doesn't stop with your skin. So we're in a sea of energy. So without a dream that you intelligently designed what I would love my life to be like, I don't have no idea how to do that. It's okay. Don't start with how. Start with what. And that's something every one of us can do now. We don't have to wait till COVID-19 is gone. And there is a health in that, because it gives your energy something to begin to move around in. And don't just rush to knowing what you really, really want. This is a process. And you have some time now, most of us right now, to really go deep. What you would really love will speak to you through two ways: longing and discontent. So if you really get close to yourself, you say, what are those secret longings I've been feeling? You don't have to tell anybody about them, but know yourself. What if I long? What are my longings? Where am I discontented? Am I tired of not having the money to do the things I really want, or not enough time to really what are my longings? What are my discontents? And then what would I love? What's the life I would love? Maybe what if it took 3 years or 2 years or even a year, but design it for about 3 years from now. What would I love my life to be like that would answer my longings and dissolve my discontent? What would that life be like? You'll have part of you telling you why you can't have it. Because we live in this world called time and space exists through the law of polarity. The way I know, and you know right now that you're alive, is because you have the idea of dead.
Right.
The way we know we feel good is we know what it feels like to not feel good. So through contrast, we have the human experience. And like Joan said, our brain is always looking for a similar experience to make sense of our current experience or current reality. So
it's interesting because Talia, the other day after she watched your event, she's like, I want to make a vision board, because for her, that was her way of doing it. And the craziest thing was, we have very similar things. She found the most beautiful house I've ever seen in my entire life, but she has this vision board, and now she just keeps going to it every day. And I've already seen her shift in just even her enjoyment of school. And this, for me, I'm like, free time. And she's just like, this is boredom time. And it's totally changed her just by thinking of what she wants down the road.
it's beautiful. Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, I'm grateful.
So where do we go? I mean, so we have our, the discontent and the longing. How do we, one of the things that really struck me when I first saw you speak was, you're like, when our group gets together in the following year, what do you want to be doing? And don't just think about it from a perspective of like what you want to do, but kind of like why you want to be doing it. And then you're like, well, what about like, if, you know, maybe you want to have flexibility to stand up and kneel down on the floor. Well, why do you want to do that? Maybe you want to be down on the floor with your grandkids. And then you say, well, but when you accomplish that, what will the emotion be? And start feeling that now. And that just blew my mind. Like I was hoping you could talk a little bit more and share a bit more about how we envision the dream, but then we actually build it.
Part of that is the science of it. You can't get to, scientifically, you can't get to a dream. You have to come from it. The easiest way for me to describe this is you're sitting and watching your television and you've got CNN on. Problem, difficulties, you know, stories of fear. It's broadcasting 24/7. Prior to the pandemic, CNN is the largest broadcast channel on our whole planet because we have this part of us that thinks if we see what could possibly go wrong, somehow we're safer. But you're on CNN and you are tired of CNN and you want discovery. And you've heard about this place called Discovery Channel. You could go anywhere in the world and it's beautiful. And you've got, or romance, you want the romance channel, but you keep tuned to CNN. In your room, right where you are, there's all these vibrations of that you could go to, but you have to change the frequency. Otherwise, you're always chasing it. So you can't get to the, once you dream a dream, or once you set a really major goal for yourself, for your health, relationship, vocation, time and money, freedom, call it, if you don't like the word dream, call it a major goal. But it's always, here's the deal, it's always more than what you actually know how to bring about for it to really be truly life-giving. If you know how to do it, but just aren't doing it, it's another whole matter. So, and the gift of having a dream and then applying a system of transformation to it, which includes allowing yourself to picture it so well that you literally can step inside of it and feel it. You want a new house? Talia wants a new house. What part of that house would she love most?
Oh,
Is it her bedroom? Does she have her own bathroom? I mean, she's in front of the mirror. She literally, you move inside of it and you feel it as real. I'm walking a little boy into kindergarten. I feel his warm hand in mine. I'm inhabiting the vibration that's aligned with the dream I have to raise that little boy and become a teacher.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And one of the things we've talked about a lot this week is that as the parents, you know, we need to be modeling these behaviors because we have such influence over our kids. But the thing I'm struck it with, for me, like, you know, we start working with programs, we know that we need to apply the science that you're talking about. And then my brain says there's a, well, maybe I shouldn't do that today, or I'm a little too busy today, maybe tomorrow. But Talia goes right away and does it, like immediately.
Well, so you are busy. And those two are not opposed to one another. Tom can be the guy who is coming from helping his daughter being the guy that's in the guy who's got this great medical career, who is the detective. You can be that guy while your circumstances are not yet congruent with the vibration of what it is that you're bringing into existence. The more you come from that vibration, the more consistently the molecular structure of all things, there are, you know, think about it. Thomas Edison did not invent electricity. He invented the system by which we could use that invisible law and bring light wherever we want to the world. That, just think about it, just a little over 100 years ago, if somebody said to you, there's these, we can move these little things we could move through and and then you could light up a house and people go, whoa, that's woo woo.
No way. Right. Yeah. Talk about woo woo.
And that's not that long ago in our human species. We are, you know, tens of thousands of years. Some people say 150, some say 250,000 years in our evolution to this point. And not understanding that the thoughts we think have huge impact in our health, in our ability to have a life we love living, And there's a major dominant frequency that every single one of us operates in. You think about your computer, whatever your interface is that you're using to be in this call tonight. That's not the operating system that's in that isn't the only possible operating system. You could install a new operating system when it comes along that's more liberal making, more memory, more faster processing. It's not different here.
Mm-hmm.
We have an operating system. And for many of us, it's I get to do something when the conditions tell me I can. And there's another way to operate, and start with your dream. Get to know its vibration, put it on imaginally, and don't do it perfectly. You will not do it perfectly, nor do you need to do it perfectly. It's an endeavoring process. You just keep returning to that frequency. And if this were happening in my life, how would I feel today? What would I be saying today? I can promise you the person who is living your dream, when they're at the kitchen sink, washing dishes or doing mundane things, they're not thinking, oh my God, I'm so stuck. How long am I going to be stuck? This is really awful. You're not thinking those thoughts. So every time you catch yourself in a thought pattern that's out of alignment with what you would really want in life, you have a way in which you just say, I can think that thought, or I can think another thought. And in the same way you change your frequency on your television, I've got my smartphone sitting here. It's turned off right now. But out of all the possibilities in the universe, well, let's say all the possibilities of people on this planet, billions of them, there's a certain frequency that Mary types in, and it's my husband. And I know that frequency.
Right.
It's a desired outcome. So I get to know that frequency, and it's a preset. So your dream, make your dream a preset vibration, the same way you have a preset on your television or a preset in your car. Let it become a favorite frequency for you.
Interesting.
And you'll start to think different thoughts. Certain things will start to show up. There's surprise, as people say, it just came out of the blue. Have you ever asked yourself the question, where is the blue? Right here. It's just not at this frequency. It's at this frequency.
Well, it's that awareness I think Joan was talking about too. And it's so one of the questions that I hear a lot of, and I try to be on that on a positive frequency, and sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, but is with all of this COVID, a lot of people with that struggle to say, hey, I don't necessarily want to dream and think it's going to be better later on because I'm not focusing on what bad is happening now. But what I just heard you say was, you can be in whatever state you're in and you still fully participate now, but that frequency out in the future, the dream you're building, you're also keeping it because it's a preset. That's your that's sort of your default.
Remember, I'm in a bed in an intensive care ward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to imagine holding my little boy's hand walking into kindergarten.
But you weren't going, I'm not sick, I don't have a kidney problem.
Oh, no. Thank you for making that distinguishment. This has zero to do with denying circumstances or conditions that are current. The idea that there's a part of us that can begin to inhabit the world of what we would love while we're dealing with the exact things that we're dealing with. There's no denial in this. There's an understanding that you exist on more than one level.
I think that's the thing that we all need to be hearing now, because and I wonder what your feelings are about, like, to me, like, I like to be fully present, and I don't want to dive into I always find it's a little hard to say the right words, but it's like, I don't want to deny what's happening right now, but I don't want to get so enveloped in it that I actually miss sort of more of the reality of it, and get out of the present moment and out of the totality of me. Because then as a physician, like, I did a lot of critical care work. If I was all in my head, I couldn't actually function well. And so I'm just wondering how that plays a role, like, our current thought patterns and then changing them with this future frequency.
Your dream for your life, Tom, has those 4 elements to it. Your
Mhm.
dream for your health, your relationships, your vocation. And I imagine that in your dreams, you are all the wonderful things you are about a physician now and more. that
Right.
the part of you that longed to be a physician, that comes to the full front of how you are as a physician. Every one of us is a growing being. So without an idea of if I were the next level of me while I'm with people who are suffering, if I were at the next level of who I could become as a physician, that's your dream. If that's going to be your future
Right.
career and your future vocation, and I imagine it is. So it's
Yeah.
not an either or. This is very important for us. It's a yes and. Yes, I'm in these conditions. Yes, right now I've got what it is that we're dealing with, every one of us. And there's a part of me right now that's more than the conditions I'm in. And that's an important discovery that lots of people, and sadly most humans, live and die and never find out.
Yeah. And I find myself thinking as you're saying that, like, and, thinking like what I can be for my daughter and all of us as children, as leaders. And I actually, and I think I just said it earlier with Talia, with her vision board, she became a different human being immediately by doing that. And I'm just thinking like, if I have the dream of who I want to be as this, dream built ideal parent, I'm going to walk out of this when we're all done tonight and go be more of that person than I was when I walked in this room.
That's awesome.
So Mary, I appreciate all your time. Is there something that like you're really dying for everyone to know about COVID-19 and what to do? And I know that you had you told me you were going to share something super special with everybody. So I was hoping you could tell us about that and tell us kind of like, is there anything as we close down things tonight and our series, where do we need to be going? Or is there like a little rocket boost to what you were just telling us about making our dreams come true?
Well, the first place anything becomes true is inside us. And so this is just, there's no denying that this is an extremely challenging and uncertain time in all of our lives. And regardless of whether we currently have it or will have it or have had it or our children, it's extremely uncertain. So it helps when in very rocky, turbulent times to stand on something that you can be certain about. And that is right now we're breathing, right now, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain, I'm sure you teach breath work too, Tom, but there's a kind
Absolutely.
of breath that helps us move from the sympathetic fight, flight, freeze way of being in this moment. And it can happen subtly where you don't even realize you're in it. So do the thing you can do. We're all following certain practices, no matter what state or country you live in. So you're all in this world, so you know what to do. Do the thing you can do. But there's another thing you could add to that, and that is that you can be in a hurricane and there's a place of peace right in the center of it. You can be in a hurricane on the ocean and the water and the waves are tumultuous. Go down deep enough and there's a place of peace. Way down deep, it's still.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever your practices are, to be able to stand on the firm of knowing, I've got this moment. And when fear wants to take you all kinds of places, it's not happening right now. I'm still breathing. So I'm going to use this moment well. Yes, all that can happen. If it does, I'll deal with it then. It's not happening right now. For all of us on this call tonight, we're healthy enough to be here. Look at you. Look at you.
Hi.
Hi.
I had somebody who asked very politely if she could stop in and say hello.
Hi, Talia. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
I hear you're a dream builder now.
Yes.
We were talking about your vision board. You're watching, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you joined us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Tom. I really appreciate being here.
And well, thank you for coming, Mary. And everyone, Mary has been on, I think, like 80 billion different events recently, helping to uplift the vibration of the world and giving so much to everyone else. And she has a gift. Could you remind me the title? Because I almost remember the name, but it's so perfect.
Stronger than circumstances.
Oh, nice. And you were talking about, standing firm while the ground is shaking,
yes.
right?
Yes, I do have that gift for you. It's something I created just recently
Yeah.
yes, thank you for reminding me that. It's called, it's a 30-day gift from me. And the first 5 days are the tools to be able to stand firm when your world is shaking. And they really are tools for traversing life's toughest terrain. You don't need this when everything's going really well, but these tools for how to be and how to have this time without this time having you are inside those free trainings. So there's 5 days of about 30 minutes a day training, and then a 30-day process that follows that, where I give you a video each day to help you be in a mindset. You're going to be in a mindset. You don't get to not be in a mindset, and there's a frequency to the mindset you're in. So then it's 30 days of supporting you having a mindset where you can be in the midst of things without having them completely take you down. It'll really help you. Okay.
It's so good. And everyone, I mean, I put the link in the chat. We're going to send you out that, and some of the other information about Mary's programs, I'll send everyone in the replays. And so just so amazingly inspirational. And, you know, I've been studying this kind of sort of self-help stuff for a long time, but the thing that really stands out to me is not only does it resonate with myself and my family, but it's so actionable. And it innately, when you start doing it, you know that this is truth, you know? So it's not like, oh yeah, I have to believe that this thing, it's like, you know, it's the ancient science because you can feel it. And so,
absolutely. Thank you, Tom.
thank you so much, Mary, for making the time for all of us. And everyone, thank you so much for making the time to join us. This has been a very inspirational week for me. And I know Talia but I'm serious, like, Talia has been exposed to Joan's work and Dr. Song's work and Katie Kimball's work and so many of the other people. And she knows Darren because Darren and I hang out a lot. But it is amazing to me that when I mentioned last night, Talia said when the whole pandemic started, you know, Daddy, we need to keep our minds calm because if our brains are going crazy, we can't think rationally or scientifically. And so we spent our time, had a little extra TV time. We threw on like The Secret. We threw on Mary's program, which I said, like, I'll get that over to everyone. In addition to this new program, which is crazy to me because Mary, I realized when I was watching some of it today that you actually just created this for this pandemic.
I did.
And the last video is not even out yet. I think Jessica said it comes out tomorrow.
Yes.
So this is seriously unbelievable what the gift you've given the world. But for me, it's just, you know, all I can say is what it feels like in my heart and in my family. And to have your daughter dream building at 10 and vision boards and just, I mean, it's just amazingly inspirational. And I think Dr. Darren just said Talia's a Jedi in training. The reality is, I'm like, you know, I feel like I'm speaking to Yoda. I've got her, you know, Padawan trainee, and I'm like the person who's following up behind Talia, having Talia lead the way. So enjoy your time, everyone, with your families. You know, when you're scared or, you know, reach out to the resources that we're going to be sending you and the Joan's book and all of Mary's amazing work. This is a time that we're all going to get through together. And it's different. We've never been through it, but together we're going to be able to take care of all of that stuff. And I'm just so unbelievably thankful, Mary, that you're here with us.
Thank you for having me. Take care, Talia. Keep dream building. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us for the past 3 nights. Just so everyone has a quick summary, we are going to be putting this up tonight and last night or on YouTube. Last night will come down pretty soon. Then tonight will be up for about another day. And so we can share it with everyone. But anyone that you love and care about, please have them sign up on the link, the originsofhealth.com/coronavirus-mini-series. And that way, not only will you and all of them get the replays sent directly to you, we're going to be sending you a whole bunch of the resources that we've talked about throughout the week, including Mary's gift, as well as some additional ones too. So thank you so much again, and be on the lookout for the replay, and we'll talk to you guys all soon.